Hello, everyone. We are live on the 220-1002 Core 2 A+ Study Group pre-show. We got 10 minutes before we get started on our Core 2 study group. I've got a bunch of questions for everyone. Let's see if I can get my screen set up here so I can see the chat room. I think everything's set up on the website. I think we're in pretty good shape. I think we've got recordings going here. This is not recording, but it is recording in the other room, in the data center, as they say. This is set. That's set. I think we're in great shape. I think we're in really good shape. Hello, chat room. Hi, everybody. Hello, everyone who's joining. Settle in. We've got a nice show today in Q&A for the Core 2. Should be pretty good. All of the emails and other things will be going out shortly. You do have the correct live link today. See, everything works so much better when I pay attention. The real key is attention to detail. My entire job description is attention to detail, which I did poorly on yesterday. So I've corrected that. You learn from your mistakes. Hello, downtown Houston. It's good to see you. Thanks for joining us. Hello, everyone else. Hello, Bangladesh is checking in. Welcome. Got lots going on here. I spent the morning editing Network Plus videos. I've got a bunch that I've uploaded that I have to process and then make public. So we've been shooting and editing and posting and shooting and editing and posting and shooting and editing and posting. So we're in this mode right now, and it's going so well. We've got well over half of the Network Plus courses already done and posted. So it's like clockwork now. Hello, Vegas. Hello, Baltimore. Good morning, Baltimore. I can still say that, right? Is this my full-time job? Well, not just sitting here, of course, but making training materials for you certainly is. I'd like some low country boy. We'll go over in Charleston. That Charleston Bridge just scares me like crazy. I was going to say a bad word. It scares me when I drive over it. That is a crazy bridge, but a beautiful area. Just a fantastic place. And we have friends who live in Charleston. So I think if you've ever been in a case where you're working through trying to find a good place in the South to go, that's a good one. The tall one, the big bridge. Whichever one is at the interstate, that it's just huge and way up there and makes you feel like you're going to fall any second. And I'm not one who's at all concerned about bridges or driving or any of that, but it's impressive. It is an impressive thing. Hello, Ohio and Ireland and Hampton Roads, Virginia, and Brooklyn and North Dakota and Ohio and Ghana and Mount Pleasant. So nice to have you here. Hello, St. Vincent. There is 6 minutes to go before we get through there. Yeah, we've got a lot of videos all sort of ready. I've got the ones I'm working on now are the wireless videos for Network Plus. So we're working on that. There's Kansas City and San Diego and Texas and North Carolina and Rhode Island. Good to have you here. There's a lot of questions. I have all new questions. I wrote the questions over the weekend, so I don't remember what they are, but all the questions are always brand new. And we'll go through those in the first hour. In the second hour, I'll open up phone lines and or take questions from the chat room. Hello, Wales, Brunei, and South Africa. Thanks for being here. We appreciate you joining. We always like doing these live streams. I like doing the live streams. I don't know about anybody else, but I like doing them. And it's always a challenge and always a wonder, are we going to have people on the live stream? So it's always nice to have folks here. Am I using a Blackmagic switcher? Yes, the video switcher I'm using is a Blackmagic switcher. This is the Television Studio 4K. So I shoot in 4K here. Online, you're seeing a stream in 1080p because I can do very short delay with 1080p. The delay for 4K is around 20 to 30 seconds. So that's not very good when I'm asking questions of you. Then I have to tap dance for 30 seconds before ever hearing a response from you. But if I have 4 seconds, which is what it is with the 1080p, it works great. Up here is a Blackmagic Web Presenter 4K. That's what's streaming this to you. So more Blackmagic there. Everything's running over SDI through a Blackmagic matrix switch. So there's a lot of Blackmagic converters in place for HDMI to SDI. So there's a lot of coax down here you don't see sort of under the desk. It's all put together in the back, but there is a lot of coax down there for all of those. It was, but it works great. It's really fantastic the way it's working. So I'm pretty happy with it. Hello, other folks joining from Utah and Nigeria and Puerto Rico, but in Chicago. France, welcome. Bolivia, good to have you here. Thanks for joining us. Yeah, I'm not in charge of the Stargate series. There's rumors of a new Stargate series. Have you seen those? There's rumors, but there's been rumors for years. So we'll have to see. Rate my cable management on a scale from 1 to 10. It is right now at about a 7. It's a little bit of a mess. It was great when I got it put in, and then I've recently made a lot of changes, and I've already, in fact, I have a new shelf arriving from Amazon later. It's either today or tomorrow. That's going to go in because on this desk, you kind of can't see on the left side. This desk has 19-inch racks on the left and right, and they're racks that are soundproofed. So there's quite a bit of noise for which one of these is making noise. One of these is you can't really hear it on this microphone, but there's quite a bit of fan noise in some of this equipment, but you can't hear a thing. It's just silent. And these are great. So I've already been working on, I pulled the TriCaster out. That changed the whole cable management system because now all the cables go into the back of the switcher. You can't see it, but there's tons of cables going into the back of that. You really can't see it from your angle, but they're down there along with all the dust. And so that changed all of the cable management in here. So my plan is to take kind of things apart and put them back together. So we're working on that. We're getting there. And the cable management's a big part of that. I like cable management to be just so because I don't want cable to be my problem. That's something easy. We can just avoid cable problems by not making them and then focus instead on troubleshooting other things. So right now, I'm not incredibly happy with the cable, but it's actually in pretty good shape. If you were to see how it's set up now, you'd think, it's not too bad. You wouldn't be shocked. You would. It's not when you walk into one of those data centers and you're just shocked. It just hits you in the face with the cable management problems. You know when you're in a good data center because the cable management is so good. Here we're doing pretty well, but I need to do better. You can always do better, right? Got a minute to go. Get started. This is not the live stream. Well, I mean, it is the live stream, but this is not the actual show. You can't take an open book exam, sorry, from CompTIA anyway, and certainly not with my notes. The studio it's working out pretty well. I have some things I need to replace. This needs to be a different 4K monitor. This one's probably too big, but there it is. So I have plans. There's other things will be happening. This live stream web presenter we used yesterday, and it works so well that we're going to use it again today. So we'll figure it out. We'll get there. How many countries do I get on these live streams usually? I've not looked at how many countries I have on here, but quite a few. Obviously, since this is in English, it's usually countries that can either follow along or that are English speaking to begin with. But it's top of the hour, everybody. I think we should get a live stream going. So here we go. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the October 2021 Professor Messer 220-1002 Core 2 A+ study group. In this study group, I will ask you questions that come directly from the CompTIA exam objectives for the 220-1002. And you, if you are here live, can answer this interactively. We'll talk more about how to do that in just a moment. We're so happy you're able to join us. This is our second study group of the week, which makes no difference that people are watching this on the live after the live stream when you're watching on demand. But it's one where we're getting a lot of A+ content in this week. If you're studying for your 220-1001, you may want to look at the previous day's study group to have a look at those. If you would like to follow along, if you are here live and you would like to answer these questions online, I have a system for you called Socrative that will do that for you. And you can do that by visiting this website. Just pop open a new browser and browse to professormesser.com/QA. QA. That will take you to the QA, the questions and answers. So all you have to do is go to that page and stay on it. There's a question waiting for you right there if it works well. Of course, we have an app that you can use. This is the Socrative student app from this company called Socrative. You can find that app on your favorite app store, whatever you happen to use. It will ask you for a room name. That room name is right here, Professor Messer, all one word, PROFESSORMESSER. If you're watching this in the replay, none of this matters because none of this will be available to you. You have to be here live to be able to answer the questions live. And if you're wondering when the next live event is, there's a calendar on the Professor Messer website. If you do all of those things the right way, just like I mentioned in that previous slide, there will be a question waiting for you for last month we had this question to see if you happen to know this one. This question asks, which of these features can support multiple Mac OS desktops? Is it Time Machine, Finder, Gestures, iCloud, or Spaces? If you know the answer, use the link that's on your screen, professormesser.com/QA. Please, of course, no answers in the chat room. Please, no hints in the chat room. We will come back to that question in just a moment. Well, thanks for being here. We have so much that happens during the week. We're only able to do these live streams once a week for each one of our exams. So we've got 4 separate live streams we do during the month. You can always check the calendar for those. But of course, we have new videos that come out all the time. You can find that on our YouTube channel at professormesser.com/YouTube. And of course, don't forget about our daily pop quiz questions. You can find those both on Twitter and on Instagram on professormesser.com/Twitter, professormesser.com/Instagram. There is also other places you can find us online. If you're trying to find us, just type in professormesser.com/LinkedIn/Discord/Facebook. See how that works? So easy. So feel free to have a look at those. Make sure you subscribe if you're interested. And that way you'll know when the latest videos happen to be. Today we're going to talk about A+, specifically the 220-1002. This was an exam that was released in January 15th of 2019, which means that we would expect on a normal schedule for this exam to be retired somewhere around July of 2022. I suspect that we are going to see this pushed a little bit, although that is pure speculation on my part. CompTIA has not provided any specific dates yet, so you should always check back with the CompTIA website to know when they plan to retire an exam. But here, as we sit in October of 2021, you have plenty of time to take this exam, and I highly recommend that you take this exam before it is retired. Make sure you check that out on the CompTIA website and just keep track of when all of these things are happening. Both of these exams are 90 minutes long. On the 220-1002, which is what we're going to talk about today, the scale is from 100 to 900, and you have to score 700. Now, CompTIA doesn't share how they grade these. That's obviously an odd scale, and we don't know how you get to 700 points. All you can really do is try to answer every question and try to answer every question correctly. That's really the best you can do. We'll have to see what happens with this. But I suspect, if I had to guess, I think that this retirement date will push at least another 3 months. It could even go farther than that, but that's just guessing. If we had to nail something down and say, what is the bare minimum, conservatively, when do we think this will retire? I think that's a great date. 6 months after release, 3.5 years after the release is the normal retirement. So we'll see as we go through this. Today, we're going to go through the 220.1002 topics specific, the domains associated with operating systems, security, software troubleshooting, operational procedures, and potpourri. So we'll go through each one of those topics sort of in order. Sometimes we jump around with some of these questions, but you'll be able to see it. Of course, if you have been to my website, you've seen that my entire A+ course is 137 videos over 18 hours of content. There's a lot of information in these videos. There needs to be some way that everything can be summarized, and there is. My course notes are a set of notes that summarize everything that's in my 220.1002 videos. Comprehensive summary. Everything that's important in these videos is brought into the course notes. Here's the course notes now. I'm going to have a look and take you through the first few pages of this. So all the information, all the charts, all the graphs, all the text, all the important details are in these course notes. I have course notes for the A+, for both the 220.1001 and the 220.1002. So you have options there to choose from. And one of the great benefits, of course, is that all of this great content is there for you to study and be able to pass these exams. It's just crammed into one PDF, or you could purchase a physical version. If you purchase the physical book, I will ship it to you and you'll get the digital version for free. You can find that on my website, professormesser.com/1002notes. Also, I have some free Q&A on my site. You can always go to my Take 10 challenges, where I take some of the archives of the questions we do in these study groups and I put them into these 10 question exams. You can find those at professormesser.com/take10. There's questions there for A+, Network Plus, Security Plus, and even more. I'm planning to add some extra things to this, so keep checking back. I hope to do that very soon, so you'll have even more content there that might be able to help you. Also, if you go to the website, there is a set of audio replays of these study groups available in podcast format. You can either stream them from professormesser.com/podcast or use the links on this page to add it to your podcast listening program. This is everything that we do in our normal study group and the after show. So I put everything in there. It's a great place to go. You can, of course, go to YouTube and see the video replay as well. And if you do that, you'll notice there are timestamps available. My marketing manager, Lori, goes through all of this and watches the replay. Hi, Lori. She's watching this on the replay and putting in all the timestamps. And she even documents the callers that call in, what they're calling about. So if you heard something in the past, you're thinking, how can I learn? How can I remember back to what that person said? What was the answer? You can find that information very quickly and just click on the time frame and jump around to exactly what you're looking for. Don't forget that when we're not doing a live stream, we always are available in Discord along with a bunch of other people. We'd love for you to join us. Just go to professormesser.com/Discord or click the Discord button at the top right of the professormesser.com website. I'll also remind you that you should not pay full price for your vouchers. When you're ready to take the exam, you could pay for your exam on the Pearson VUE website and pay full price. Or you can buy the voucher on my site and use that voucher code to pay for the exam, and you get a discount built into this. You don't have to provide any coupon codes. There's nothing special you have to do. They're just all discounted at professormesser.com/vouchers. If you purchase the voucher from my site, I will also give you for free my Exam Hacks ebook. This is an ebook that previously has only been available in my success bundles. Now you can get it as part of these vouchers, which makes sense because this is an ebook I wrote with all of these tips and tricks to help you study, help you during the exam, and in some cases even help you after the exam. All of these are in here. I think you might be able to get some extra points just by reading through some of these testing hacks, if you will. that I have put into my Exam Hacks ebook. You get the ebook for free if you purchase the voucher on the Professor Messer website. Unfortunately, they're only available for the U.S., Canada, and U.S. territories. If you're outside the U.S., these vouchers won't apply to you. I'm so sorry. Let's go back to that question we asked earlier, which was, which of these features can support multiple Mac OS desktops? Is it a time machine, Finder, Gestures, iCloud, or Spaces? All of these are real things, by the way. I didn't make up any of those. Those are real things. Let's see how you answered this one. 51% of you say it's Spaces. We just made it over that majority amount. We've got 22% that said time machine, 19% that said iCloud, 6% said Finder, and 2% said Gestures. Well, having multiple desktops in one screen can be very useful, and you can use the Spaces function of Mac OS to be able to spread out everything you're doing. So if you're someone who likes to collect a lot of windows on your screen, which is me, and you just need to be able to expand all of this out and find exactly what you need and then drill back down into one thing, that's Mission Control. And then at the top of the page of Mission Control is the ability to set up separate desktops. And in each desktop, you could have perhaps different applications, groups of different projects, and then you could switch between those desktops back and forth. Here's a better view of this desktop. The desktops are at the top. I've got two desktops up here, both doing different things, and you can see Mission Control is kind of spread out my screen and showing a lot of different things that are there. So if you're one of the folks that answered Spaces, answer E, that is the right answer. You got that one absolutely correct. Well done. That was our rewind question. Now everybody is in the Q&A. Everybody should be able to answer these and see what's going on. Let's now shift gears into something new. As many of you know, the first new question of every study group is a performance-based question. For those of you that aren't familiar with these types of questions, you will get a handful of these at the very beginning of your CompTIA exam. Usually plus or minus 5 questions or so will be questions that are not multiple choice. So these are questions that are drag and drop, matching questions, putting things in a particular order. They could put you to a command prompt and ask you to perform some troubleshooting. There's a lot you can do with these performance-based questions. And so I like to give you a performance-based question at the beginning of every study group. Here is our performance-based question for this month. It asks, match the commands to the descriptions. Some of these descriptions will not be used, which is an interesting technique for the exam. They often do this where they will give you more answers than you can use. So they make it a little more difficult than a traditional matching question. Let's go through the 4 commands. Those 4 commands are cp, ifconfig, dd, and chmod. Those are the 4 commands. Now I have 6 descriptions. Those 6 descriptions are edit a text file, restore an image of a partition, view the current running services, view the network configuration, change the permissions of a file, or copy a file from one location to another. So we've got quite a few to go through. Obviously, there will be 2 descriptions left over at the end. And for bonus answers, if you happen to know what you would use for the 2 descriptions that are left over, make a note of those as well. We'll step through those at the end. So for those of you listening in on the podcast again, let me go through the commands. They are cp, ifconfig, dd, and chmod. The descriptions are edit a text file, restore an image of a partition, view the currently running services, view the network configuration, change the permissions of a file, or copy a file from one location to another. There you go. You've got now the ability to put these into your Socrative front end. If you think they're already in the correct order, you can simply put in 1A, 2B, 3C, 4D, and you're done. But I suspect that's not how they are listed. I suspect they're scrambled up a little bit. So see if you happen to know what these are. feel free to put your answers in. I need to check and see how many are coming in. As many of you are starting to type in and put those in the list, I'm going to show some answers here so we can see a number of you putting them in. And again, it's not 1A, 2B, 3C, 4D. I don't think anybody has answered that, though. So I think we're okay. I'm looking through the answers. Because this is a fill in the blank, it doesn't summarize the answers for me. So I'm kind of just viewing, spot checking, looking very quickly and seeing what people are typing in. And I think a lot of us have nailed down these pretty well. I think a lot of you have done very good with a number of these. But this last one, this chmod, I think might be throwing some folks. So we'll step through each one of these and get a feel for exactly what these happen to be. Yeah, there are questions like this on the exam. Obviously, there are a lot of command line questions on the exam. The questions on the exam especially are for both Windows command line and Linux command line. And because Mac OS is based off of Unix and there is a similarity to the commands in Linux, all of the Linux commands that are listed in the exam objectives also apply towards the command line of Mac OS for the most part. I think for the 100% of it do apply towards that. And if it doesn't, you can adjust or add utilities to Mac OS to make it that way. I think when I demonstrate these in the videos, I think I might be running Linux, but some of them I might be at the Mac OS command prompt. So we'll have to see what it happens to be. I think it may be good to break those out and have a feel for them. Let's see how we did with this one. We'll step through each one of these commands and see what they happen to be. We'll start with CP. So the CP command, if you remember, as you're working through Linux and knowing what these commands are, the CP command is a shortcut for copy. And in the world of Linux, this CP command can copy files or objects in the file system from one location to another. So answer F, copy a file from one location to another, is the correct answer to match with CP. Next on our list is ifconfig. Ifconfig stands for the interface configuration, and if you're trying to look at your network interfaces, this would be a great place to view the configuration of the network. Ifconfig, very similar to the IP config you might have in Windows, for example. Next on our list is DD, which does have an abbreviation, but not one that makes any sense when you're trying to figure out what it is. But DD is used to convert or move large amounts of data from one place to the other, commonly used in Linux and Unix to back up partitions or drives, storage drives themselves, to a separate file so that you can image an entire partition or restore that entire partition using the DD command. Very common to use this, and it can write to other separate storage devices, tape drives, and other types of output. But this is a very common way to back up a partition and be able to restore that partition again in both Linux and Mac OS. Although with Mac OS, most of us are using Time Machine because that's built into the OS. Last on our list, chmod. Chmod allows you to change the mode of what a file configuration happens to be, or an object in the file system, and changing the permissions of the files, what that mode refers to. Is it read-only? Is it an executable file? How can we set those settings? Well, we use the chmod command to set those. It's a very useful utility. You will use it quite a bit whenever you are in Linux, especially if you're installing an application or updating an application, or you want to make a file read-only. That's the command you would use to be able to do that. chmod. Now, this means that we had two descriptions that were left over. We had description A, which was edit a text file, and we had description C, which is view the currently running services. From a Windows or Linux perspective, there's many different ways to do this. I wrote down the Linux versions of these answers. So editing a text file can be done in VI. Of course it's VI. And there is no other way that you would ever properly edit a text file in Linux other than VI. I'm waiting for all of the emails from the Emacs people telling me how wrong I am. There's plenty of ways to edit text files in Linux. I just think VI is the best way to do it. People who edit text files at the command line in Linux, well, it's Linux. We fight about everything. We fight about the version of Linux and the distribution that we're using. We fight about what utilities we use. And VI or Vim, I guess Vim is the more updated and more functional version, but VI is the traditional version of this. And I suspect on your Linux distribution that VI is probably also associated with that. Good example, though, everybody in the chat room already telling me how wrong I am, and it's really Vim. See? We just do nothing but fight in Linux, which is probably why I don't have a Linux application. I don't have a Linux training program yet. Maybe that's why. And lastly, view the current running services. In Linux, it's the PS command, processes, to be able to see that, PS. And that's a great way to view what's running. A lot of different options available for that. You can break it out by the owner of the service. You can see a lot of information there. Helps you if you're planning to terminate a particular service. It's useful to view the process ID and other information about that service before you kill it. So the PS command becomes extremely useful. So on our list, number 1 CP matches with copy a file from one location to another. Ifconfig, view the network configuration. DD allows you to restore an image of a partition. You've got chmod to change the permissions of a file. You've got VI to edit a text file. And then you've got PS to view the currently running services. Plenty of different options there. This is only some of the Linux commands you need to know. There are, I think, 20 different commands on the 220.1002. Make sure you're familiar with all of them. They are listed in the exam objectives, and they are demonstrated in my video, section 1.9, basic Linux commands. So that's a great place to go if you want to get an overview of all of the different Linux commands. You want to see what they look like. That's a great way to do it. So make sure you're familiar with that particular configuration. This is going to be certainly something that comes up on your exam because there are so many different options there. Knowing the Windows commands, knowing the Linux commands can be very, very useful. Make sure you're familiar with those. Let's now shift gears and go back to multiple choice questions for the 220.1002. Our next question asks, which of the following will launch Windows 10 safe mode during boot? Is it restart from the task manager, hold shift while clicking restart, press F1 while booting, update the BIOS boot order, or rename the Windows profile? Which of the following will launch Windows 10 safe mode during boot? Is it to restart from the task manager, holding shift while clicking restart, pressing F1 while booting, updating the BIOS boot order, or renaming the Windows profile? If you think you know the answer, please don't answer in the chat room. Use the link that's on your screen at professormesser.com/QA. It's the best way to answer here. In the chat room, Christopher with a $10 super chat. Thank you so much for that donation. Christopher writes, thank you, Professor, for everything you're doing. Recently passed the 220.1001. Thanks to your material, we'll be taking the 1002 later this month. Congratulations on passing that first exam. For those of you that aren't familiar, you can take these in either order. So if you think the 1002 is easier for you, maybe you take that one first. Christopher has already taken the 1001 and passed it. Congratulations. And now take the 1002 later this month. And we wish you the best luck with your 1002 as well. And hopefully at the end of that, you'll have a perfect score and be A+ certified and ready to go. Thank you for also the $10 super chat. We really do appreciate that too. This question that we have on launching Windows 10 safe mode is an important one. I'll explain why when we get into the answers of this. In the chat room, we're also talking about which one is more difficult. Is 1002 more difficult? Is 1001 more difficult? And I guess it really depends on your background. If you've been spending a lot of time on the Windows operating system, you may find 1002 is so much easier than 1001. If you're somebody who comes from more of a hardware troubleshooting and networking background, you may find that 1001 is easier. So I guess it sort of depends. Both are challenging exams because both are very broad exams. But of course, like anything else, we are relying on our past experiences and our past knowledge to be able to answer some of these questions. Sometimes the 1002 exam fits better with what you happen to know than the 1001. Let's see how we did with this one. How did we answer this particular question? The question asked, which of the following will launch Windows 10 safe mode during boot? Is it restart from the task manager, hold shift while clicking restart, pressing F1 while booting, updating the BIOS boot order, or renaming the Windows profile? And you can see that 52% of you say you press F1 while booting is what does it. 36% of you say you hold the shift key while clicking restart. 7% said to restart from task manager, 3% said update the BIOS boot order, and 2% said rename the Windows profile. So A, D, and E, single digits. Not many people answering or working through all of these. The real challenge in Windows 10 with safe mode is that it never actually shuts down when you try to restart it or try to turn the machine off and turn it back on again. It only halfway shuts down. It effectively goes into a hibernate mode. So it's something called fast startup in Windows. It's available in Windows 8, 8.1, and Windows 10, where if you tell it to shut down, it doesn't shut down all the way. So when you turn it on, you may notice that it starts up very quickly. Well, that's because it's not starting up from all the way at the beginning of the BIOS loading. It's simply starting up from a hibernation. And that really creates a problem if you need to get to the BIOS or you need to start safe mode, which you can only start if you are restarting all the way from the beginning of the boot process. One of the ways you can do this to force it to really shut down all the way so that you can then start safe mode or get into the BIOS, you can hold down the shift key when you're clicking the restart button. That, of course, assumes that you have access to the Windows desktop. It's assumed that you can still control the Windows desktop. And if you can, just holding down the shift key when you click restart will make sure that the entire system turns all the way off before restarting again. There's another way to do it. You can go to Settings, Update and Security, Recovery, Advanced Startup, and click Restart Now. I don't know how I'd ever remember that, but that is one way to do it. There's also a way that you can configure how it handles the fast startup process in System Configuration under MS Config. This is another challenge. Now, what if you don't have access to the Windows desktop? You need to have the system restart all the way from the beginning of the BIOS so that you can then tell it to go into safe mode. How are you supposed to do that? You can't hold down the shift key and click restart because you don't have access to the Windows desktop. You don't have a way to get into this Settings, Update, and Security, Recovery, Advanced Startup, and Restart Now. You don't have a way to start and use MS Config. Well, the way that you do it is you have it start booting, and then you push the power button to interrupt the boot process. Then you have it start booting again, and you push the power button to interrupt the boot process. And you do this 3 times. After the 3rd time, Windows thinks, maybe you're trying to interrupt the boot process. Let me completely restart from the very beginning. I'll load the BIOS and give you the option to push the buttons you want to push to be able to get back to the BIOS settings or to start safe mode. So there are still ways to force Windows into really restarting the system, but it takes you 3 attempts of having to manually stop the process. It seems like that's something you shouldn't do, right? It seems like stopping it right in the middle doesn't work, but that's what you have to do. Nope, holding the power button doesn't work either. Doesn't start up from the very beginning. It goes into hibernate mode. The power button is not a power button, of course. The power button is simply sending a signal to the motherboard to do something. And Windows takes that and says, oh, you're trying to shut the system down? Let me hibernate. So that's if there was an actual switch on the wall and we get power it down, that'd be different. But it doesn't work that way. So that's the real challenge, is working through this. That means that the answer that we were looking for is holding the Shift key while clicking restart. 36% of you got that one right. Pressing F1 while booting doesn't help you if the system isn't starting all the way from the beginning to interpret you pressing F1, assuming F1 had something to do with your BIOS. And F1 may not. On your motherboard, F1 may not do anything. So that doesn't help anybody. Pressing F1 while booting doesn't help anyone with any of this. The only thing you could possibly do of the available options are to hold Shift while clicking restart. Restarting from the task manager just as a normal restart without shutting the system all the way down. Updating the BIOS boot order. You can't get to the BIOS boot order because the system isn't shutting all the way down to allow you access to the BIOS. That's not going to launch Windows 10 Safe Mode. In fact, launching Safe Mode doesn't require you to update any BIOS boot order anyway, so don't do that. Don't start making changes to your BIOS boot order. That's not a good idea. And then renaming the Windows profile, not something you want to do either. Don't start renaming profiles. That's not going to help you. The only thing of this list that's going to allow you to boot into Windows 10 Safe Mode is to hold the Shift key while clicking restart so the system can shut all the way down and restart all the way from the BIOS and the post. If you answered B, 37% of you got that one absolutely right. Let's do another one. That one was pretty good. Let's see. I don't know if this next one, I'm going to look here at the next answer real quick. Okay, this next answer I've not given away yet. So we can do this question. This question asks, which of the following is native to Linux? Which of the following is native to Linux? Is it Python, VBS, PowerShell, shell scripting, or batch files? Which of the following is native to Linux? Is it Python, VBS, PowerShell, shell scripting, or batch files? If you think you know the answer, go to professormesser.com/QA. And I'm not looking to parse or split hairs over what native to Linux happens to be. I look forward to all your cards and letters. You know what I'm trying to say. So make sure you look through this list and give me the best answer. Now, if you think you know the answer, go to professormesser.com/QA. Please no answers in the chat room. Please no hints in the chat room. We're going to see if we happen to know what these are. One of the things that I always run into, if you're ever in the process of working with Linux, go download a Linux and install it into a VM. When you get into a virtual machine, you're able to really work with the operating system without worrying about anything you might be doing with your normal system. And it's a great way to learn Linux. And you can learn it on your own machine without having to worry about what may be happening somewhere else. So see if you happen to know this. This is technically not a Linux question, though. This is a question about Python, VBS, PowerShell, shell scripting, and batch files. So a little bit different than the traditional idea of Linux questions and working through them. Let's see if you're familiar enough with the operating system to know what is native and what is not native to the operating system. See if you happen to know. This is one also that it's going to be important for you. I got a question in my email yesterday that said, oh, do I need to know how to write a Python script, write a VBS script, work with PowerShell, do shell scripting, and work with batch files? Is there a way that do I need to go through and really understand how to build out all? You don't. But you do need to know what these are. All 5 of these options are in your exam objectives. You need to know how they apply to what you might be doing on a day-to-day basis. So hopefully this will help you as you go through this. Let's see how you did with this question that asked, which of the following is native to Linux? Is it Python, VBS, PowerShell, shell scripting, or batch files? How did you answer this one? Well, you can see 45% of you say it's shell scripting, 19% said Python, 13% said VBS, and 11% as a tie said PowerShell or batch files. With this one, double digits for every single answer. So we're not quite sure. I guess if we go with the 46%, that's almost the middle of the road for shell scripting, and we can kind of go with that one at least initially. But what is the answer? What were we really looking for? Well, being native to Linux assumes that you are working on the Linux shell, that you are at a command prompt and you're working on the Bourne shell, the C shell, or many of the other shells that you could run and have available to you. That means that you can script from that command line using a shell script. That's what we call the scripts in Linux that allows you to automate things that are at the command line. I use shell scripting extensively on my Professor Messer website, for example. You'll be able to identify shell scripts because they almost always will start with a hash bang. So some people refer to this as the shebang. That has the hash prompt and the exclamation mark, which is what normal people would call it. It's the number sign and the exclamation mark. Well, that doesn't sound cool enough, so we're going to call it a hash bang. This is right at the beginning of the file. You can see that hashbang /bin/bash, which is referring to the type of shell that the rest of this script is going to run in. It's going to run in the bash shell. And there's this whole scripting that's done there. You can almost follow what it's doing. This one is well documented, unlike my scripts that have details of what every line is doing in the shell script. And then finally, at the bottom, this is taking certain files and it is converting some of those together. Shell scripts are used extensively in Linux. If you're doing any type of Linux in your career as a network administrator, as a system administrator, you're going to be using shell scripts a lot. So feel free to become familiar with those. I always tell people automation is one of those things that can really set you apart in the workspace, in the workplace. So make sure that you're very familiar with PowerShell, with Python, and then perhaps with shell scripts as well. I think PowerShell and Python are two extremely popular sites. If you're doing more Linux than Windows, then shell script and Python should be what you work on. These would be great things to know. Now, why wouldn't it be some of these others? Let's start with Python. 18% of you said Python. Python used extensively in Linux. I just mentioned it, but it's not native to Linux. You have to install Python separately. It's not something that traditionally is included with Linux, although certainly there are Linux distributions that include Python in the distribution, but that's not very common. And almost always you're going to have to make an update or change it anyway. It's not something that you would consider to be native to Linux. 13% of you said VBS, the Visual Basic scripting, is specific to Windows. Visual Basic is a Windows function. That's certainly not something you will find in Linux, nor will you find PowerShell, which is also a Windows scripting or Windows console that you can use. If you're doing any Windows administration, the more you know about PowerShell, the more valuable you are going to be. Another one of those you should really, really know about. And then batch files are used. That's what we call the scripting process in Windows. It's not a shell script in Windows. It's just a batch file in Windows. And that goes back to the DOS days of when we didn't even have Windows. We were still running batch files, and they're still available in Windows. These days, though, PowerShell effectively replaces the traditional batch file because in PowerShell, you have access to all of the underlying Windows operating system functions, which often you don't have when you're just running a batch file. So the answer here, the one that you should really go with as being native to Linux, is indeed shell scripting. Make sure you're familiar with those and all of the different scripting options available in my video, section 4.8, the video name called scripting. Make sure you go through and become familiar with those options. Well, as you can see, there is a lot of information on this exam, extensive amount of details. And if you've ever taken a CompTIA exam before, you know that they don't ask you trivia questions. They don't ask you questions that are definition questions. They ask you questions that are more involved. There's a particular style, a particular flair to the type of questions that they ask. And what I found is some of the things that you'll find online for studying with Q&A, not that great, quite honestly. And a lot of times when I'm taking some of these practice exams online, they tell me if I got it right and they tell me if I got it wrong, but they don't explain to me why I got it right or why I got it wrong. This was frustrating to me. So what I did was write my own set of practice questions that are made to emulate the same voice, the same style as what you might find on the CompTIA exam. These are my practice exams. This is a pretty big book, 380 pages with 3 90 question practice exams. It's a big book. This is not only available in this physical form that you see here, but in a digital form. In fact, I have the book right here. Let's do a question from the book. Remember, no answers in the chat room. Here's a question, A8, which asks, a user in the accounting department has received this error message, quote, the print spooler service is not running, end quote. The user contacts the help desk and opens a ticket for assistance. The help desk technician performs some testing and identifies the issue. Which of these would be the best next step? Should we reinstall all printer drivers, restart the spooler service, reboot the computer, or power cycle the printer? Now, if we think we know the answer, this is a PDF, and if your PDF reader allows you to perform annotation, you can certainly make marks inside of this. And if all you wanted was the answer, and you want to know is it A, B, C, or D, I have listed just quick answers here. But one of the things that you will also see is there's an option here for the details. That is a hyperlink. So instead of me paging through to page 44 in the book, which you certainly can do if you've got the book in front of you, but if this is a PDF, you can simply click the details. It takes you to page 44, and it tells you that the answer is B, restart the spooler service. And it tells you in the answer, here's why we believe this is the right answer. The spooler operates as a background service in Windows. Once the problem is identified and corrected, the spooler service would need to be restarted. I never get the right answer, though. When I'm going through these, the part where I really need to learn is when I get it wrong. I don't need to learn if I got it right. I don't need you to necessarily explain to me why it's right. So in my books, I take every wrong answer and I explain to you why those answers are incorrect. So that if you did get it wrong, you'll learn why that's wrong. And in fact, I think these wrong or incorrect answer explanations can help you on the actual exam if some of these other topics come up. This is something that can really help as you're reading through these questions. And I always tell people, even if you get it right, go read through the incorrect answers and the explanations as well. That's going to help you too. Also, at the very bottom of this page, I put a QR code. In fact, if you had your camera handy right now on your phone, just point your camera at that. You don't have to take a picture of it. Just point your camera. It'll take you to the video in Objective 3.1 Troubleshooting Solutions, or you can simply click the link. It takes you to my website where the topic that this question came from is explained in the video and having that available. All of this, now I can click the back button in my PDF reader and simply go to the next question on my list. This is my practice exams book. You can find out more about this at professormesser.com/core2pe. And I have practice exams book currently for the Core 1, the Core 2, Security Plus, and hopefully Network Plus 008 will be coming soon. Let's hope. I'd love to do one for Network Plus. That would be great. Find out more, professormesser.com/core2pe, or follow the links from my website to these practice exams. Let's do another question from the study group. I've got another multiple choice question available to you. This question asks, which of the following would be the best way to view and control a server's desktop remotely? Would that be MSTSC, regedit, MMC, task list, or defrag? Which of the following would be the best way to view and control a server's desktop remotely? Is that MSTSC, regedit, MMC, task list, or defrag? If you think you know the answer, please no answers in the chat room. Go to professormesser.com/QA and you can answer the question online right there. Should be very useful. In the chat room, Brains says, I bought these exams. Honestly love them. Thank you for your support. And thank you for your review there in the chat room of these questions. I spend extensive amounts of time writing these questions and the answers and the explanations. I do all of this writing myself. This is not something I outsource to someone else. I really think Q&A should be high quality. One of the biggest problems I have with Q&A is that I run into a lot of questions that are vague. The answers don't make sense. The answers aren't really challenging you in the same way the exams are challenging you. I want a set of questions that really emulates the exam experience. And that's what I'm striving to do when I'm writing these practice exam books. Hopefully you feel the same way when you're reading through them. It can be very useful. And it is time consuming. to write all of these things out manually. But I think that's where the difference is. I never want to make training materials for you that are good enough. I think they should be training materials that really help you pass the exam. And so that's what I strive whenever I make these practice exams. Hopefully you can see that as I am building these out and creating this content. I think it's really, really important because I'm someone who's been in IT. I've worked as a systems engineer, a network administrator, a systems administrator, a remote desktop technician. And I've taken these exams and I know what's expected of you when you sit in that room. So I want you to have every possible advantage when you walk into that exam room. Let's see how you did with this question. It asked, which of the following would be the best way to view and control a server's desktop remotely? Would that be MSTSC, regedit, MMC, task list, or defrag? Let's show the results. 71% of you say it's MSTSC. An odd set of abbreviations there. 20% though say it's MMC is what you would use. 5% said regedit, 2% said task list, 2% said defrag. So now we're in this case of trying to figure out, do we go with the 71%? What is MSTSC? It does stand for something. It stands for the Microsoft Terminal Services Client. This, in some cases, you refer to simply as the remote desktop utility. So go to the remote desktop utility. Well, that's MSTSC. Although in Windows 10, I think you can probably type in remote desktop, and I think it brings up MSTSC if that's something that's loaded on your machine. This allows you, of course, to view the desktop of a remote device that is using Windows and using the remote desktop functionality. This comes from the TSC, Microsoft Terminal Services, comes from the older Microsoft Terminal Services server, where you can set up multiple desktops, VDI type configuration, a virtual desktop, and then be able to access that virtual desktop using the MSTSC utility. But these days we use it often for troubleshooting. We're in the help desk, we're at home, we're working from home, we need some way to access that server. Maybe the server doesn't even have a keyboard or a monitor on it. Well, we can still access it with the Terminal Services Client. MSTSC is the right answer. 71% of you answered that absolutely correct. Would not be the Microsoft Management Console. MMC by itself doesn't include any particular way to view or control a server's desktop remotely. There may be some plugins that you can put inside of MMC, but by itself, MMC doesn't provide any type of functionality for remote desktop. So I would not call that the best way to view and control a server's desktop remotely, although you could see where both of those could be technically correct. Only one of them is the best way, and that clearly is MSTSC. It's very direct. Only 5% of you chose regedit. If you need to edit the registry, that's what you would use regedit for, and editing the registry doesn't help you view a remote desktop. Task list will show you all of the tasks running on your computer, both interactive applications and services, but it doesn't show you any remote views of a desktop on a separate machine. That's not going to help you. And defrag, the defragmentation utility, is used to, especially on hard drives. Remember hard drives? It takes all of the non-contiguous files on a hard drive and pulls them all back together so your hard drive runs faster and makes you feel bad for not already upgrading to an SSD. That's what defrag is for. It's to force you. Although in my case, I do have I think about a 20 terabyte array back there that I just use to temporarily keep some of my videos and other files on. So hard drive's still around. We still have a good use case for those. Probably not on our desktops, however. You should get, if you're thinking about getting an SSD, the answer is yes, you should already have one of those. Make sure you get your hands on an SSD. In this case, being able to view and control a server's desktop remotely, MSTSC. Now, if you're watching this video for continuing education unit credit, this won't apply to you if you haven't passed the exam yet, but once you pass and earn your certification, some of you collect CEUs to be able to renew that certification. Some of you simply just take your CertMaster CE, which is really what I recommend these days. But for those of you still collecting CEUs for both CompTIA and for other reasons, make sure that you follow these instructions. I'll send you an email. You go to the top or the bottom of the Professor Messer website, click the Contact Us link. In that Contact Us link, put your name, your email address. In the subject line, put that you've watched the 220 1002 Core 2A Plus Data Group for October 2021, or some combination of those things in the subject line so that I can recognize it. And then on a line by itself in the body of the message, put the super secret code word of the month, MSTSC. MSTSC is the super secret code word of the month. If you would also like to put anything else that's in your system, anything else that happened you'd like to put in there for me to read, you can put in. I'm not able to respond back to every single one of these, but I do try my best on this. From the chat room, Rebirth Flame with the $10 super chat. Thank you for that donation. Rebirth writes, use your books for 1001, doing 1002 on Monday. Best of luck with your 1002 test on Monday. Feeling confident with your guides? I, too, go through even the right answers and wrong answers, know why I got it right, and the other answers were wrong. Being able to read all of those, I think, has a big effect on understanding the whole picture of the questions that I'm writing. So make sure you are familiar with that. It can be pretty useful to make that happen. There is plenty to go through with the exam. Make sure you use those exam objectives as you're studying. If you're going to be taking that test on Monday, now is about the time when you should be going through that the list of all of those bullets in the exam objectives and checking off everything you know and circling the things you don't. That's a great way as a final study check to make sure that you really understand everything that's expected of you. We have some time for another question, so let's get another one in. The next one on our list is a question that asks, which of the following would be the best way to limit access based on a fingerprint? Would that be a USB token, a token-based lock, a biometric control, a private key, or something you have? Which of the following would be the best way to limit access based on a fingerprint? Would that be a USB token, a token-based lock, a biometric control, a private key, or something you have? If you think you know the answer, use that link that's on your screen, professormesser.com/QA, to lock in your answer. As always, please no answers in the chat room. Please no hints in the chat room. Dwayne in the chat room says, you purchased my Security Plus practice exams and was a huge help. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. Thank you for the wonderful content. Passed your A+, Network Plus, and Security Plus by watching my content. Congratulations on all three of those. I need to make more content now. At the beginning of the year, I do have plans right after updating the A+, which is probably going to be the first half of 2022. I would love to do another course. So if anybody has any recommendations, you can always send me what you would like to see. I have my own list, by the way. It's a list that's constantly changing, but I have a top 5 that I'm thinking about. Sometimes I'm surprised by what people say, no, I'd like to do this. So that helps me understand if I'm really doing the right thing with all of these. We'll have to see. Yeah, Linux is one that comes up quite a bit. I tried to do a Linux course before. It just was not the right fit, I don't think. CISA might not be a bad idea. CISA would be a pretty good one. CCNA, Cisco would be always fun because that's really my wheelhouse. We'll have to figure out. Linux does come up a bit. One of the problems with Linux is that there's so many different ways to do things in Linux, and people feel that you should know every possible way, that sometimes that becomes a little overwhelming in the feedback I get with Linux. AWS would be a great one. You know, cloud-based technologies, some of the Microsoft cloud-based technologies would be really good as well. Pentest probably doesn't have the coverage that I'm really looking for. It's a very niche certification with very limited jobs available. So it doesn't quite fit my particular genre, if you will, for that. Yeah, I think cloud computing would be a good one with these. Let's see how you did with this question. Which of the following would be the best way to limit access based on a fingerprint? Would that be USB token, token-based lock, biometric control, private key, or something you have? 87% say it is a biometric control is what you would use, and single digits for everything else. 6% said private key. It says key right there. Certainly that's the right answer. 3% said something you have. 2% said USB token, and 2% said token-based lock. Or if we're talking about a fingerprint, we're talking about a handprint, we're talking about your face, then we're really talking about biometrics. That's what we're working through. We're taking a mathematical representation of your fingerprint, locking that in, and then using that fingerprint to be able to lock or unlock a particular door or locked area, a controlled area. Can be extremely useful. It's not a foolproof way of providing access, but it does provide some level, and certainly one that you could use as another factor of authentication is biometrics. That is the right answer. Biometric control. Answer C. 88% of you were spot on with that. A USB token is one that you would use. It's almost like a certificate that you would have on a USB key. That is a very good one. It's almost in the same realm of a private key. And plugging that in would give you access. But here we were talking about a fingerprint, not a USB key. A token-based lock is one where you are coming up with either plugging in a card or getting a card that's nearby to activate based on a token that might be inside of the card. Again, that's not a fingerprint. That's very useful utility, useful functionality, but not a fingerprint. And then something you have would be something you keep with you. I often mention having your mobile phone with you is something you have, and sending you a text message or having you use an application that provides you with a pseudo-random number is a good example of something you have. But in this case, a fingerprint is not something you have. A fingerprint is something you are. So you don't just keep your fingerprint with you. You don't accidentally forget your fingerprints at home. It's part of you. There's no possibility for doing that. So it would not be something you have. It would be something you are, which means the only available option here, really it says the best option, the only real option here is answer C, biometric control. 88% of you got that one right. Let's do another one. I've got another question for you. This question asks, which of the following would be the best way to enable and disable startup applications in Windows 10? Would that be SFC, Event Viewer, Disk Manager, Reliability Monitor, or Task Manager? Which of the following would be the best way to enable and disable startup applications in Windows 10? Would that be SFC, Event Viewer, Disk Manager, Reliability Monitor, or Task Manager? If you think you know the answer, use the link that's on your screen, professormesser.com/QA, and lock in your answer. Please no answers in the chat room. Please no hints in the chat room. We're going to, no Googling. No Googling in the chat room. That doesn't make sense. But don't Google. You don't have Google available on the exam, and you don't have chat rooms available on the exam. So we're going to pretend that we are taking the exam, and that's all we can do is to answer what we think the best answer might be. Lock that answer in. Go to professormesser.com/QA and lock it in. Should be a good one for you to work through. Let's see if you happen to know the answers to these. This would be a good one if you're working at all. And some people said, we were doing a lot of Linux earlier. Well, now we're doing a lot of Windows. We're trying to figure it all out with this. More people checking in, AWS, Pentest, a lot of AWS and Azure type responses to things you might want to see as a separate training course. There's a lot of good Azure courses or Azure options from Microsoft. Those would be really good to do. I'd love to do some type of web-based training. AWS would be another good one to be familiar with those. I think those would be excellent to look through. And I think there's an option and a need to be able to have sort of that second level cloud training. A lot of the cloud trainings I see start off with something very basic. This is the cloud. In the cloud, we can create a service. Well, there needs to be some training a little bit higher, just above that. And I think that would be a good one to do as well. I haven't made any decisions about this, but it's one of those where I change my mind every day anyway. So even if I did make a decision today, it would be changed hundreds of times before I ever get a chance to do the actual course. Same like anything. Some folks in the chat room, I had some problems at home, couldn't take my exam. Is there any way to contact anyone to get a refund or reschedule? You should contact Pearson VUE directly. use those emails and links that are on the confirmations they sent to you originally, or log into your Pearson VUE account and follow the links there for support. That's the best way to handle it. They're the only ones that can manage it anyway. They manage the entire process, so that's where you would go. Let's see how you did with this one. Which of the following would be the best way to enable and disable startup applications in Windows 10? Would it be SFC, Event Viewer, Disk Manager, Reliability Monitor, or Task Manager? Your results showed 90% of you say Task Manager. Now, this surprises me because I thought there would be some differences between all of these. Only 7% said Event Viewer, 2% said Disk Manager, and then 1% apiece said SFC and Reliability Monitor. So a number of you are having a lot of challenges with things like the boot process or being able just to manage what runs when you start up your Windows. This is a great troubleshooting tool if you are trying to figure out why your system is so slow when it boots up. Maybe there's an application that's starting when you boot up that's causing everything to slow down. And when that happens, you need some way to properly manage the startup apps. Now, back in the day, we had to do this in Win.ini, or we had to find a separate utility that would help us collect all the different places. You had to go to the startup group, you had to go to the Win.ini, you had to go to different places in Windows to kind of pull all of that up and really see what applications were starting. But these days, you've got Task Manager, which has in Task Manager itself a tab called Startup. And then inside that Startup tab, you can enable and disable applications and services from running all within Task Manager. Such an easy front end to be able to do this. There's a separate services tab for all of the services you happen to be, and you have different strategies you could use. You could disable everything, reboot your machine. If it's suddenly fast booting up, then you know it must be one of the things you just disabled. So now you can maybe re-enable half of them or re-enable one at a time. I guess it depends on how many applications you have in your startup there. If you're on my machine, there's a lot of applications in my startup. So I would probably take the top half. Let's turn the top half on, reboot the system. Are we still having the problem? So it's the cut it in half and go from there. Although sometimes you have this feeling like, I think I know which one it is. And maybe you can drill down on which one you think it happens to be. That's one very good way to go about doing this. So if you did answer Task Manager, 90% of you got that one absolutely correct. No question there. Task Manager is the right answer in Windows 10. That's what you should be using, and it's an incredibly useful utility to make that happen. SFC, the System File Checker, is great for analyzing the core operating system files of your system to see if any have been corrupted, but it does nothing with being able to enable and disable startup applications. So SFC is not going to do it. Event Viewer gives you, if you haven't looked at it, thousands of events, hundreds of thousands of events that are in your system. Everything that happens to be going on can really help you understand what a system is doing and help you with troubleshooting, but doesn't help you enable or disable startup apps. Not going to help you. Disk Manager is great for understanding what the disk is doing or reconfiguring different options for your storage devices, but doesn't help you enable or disable startup applications. And finally, Reliability Monitor, which often is much easier to use than Event Viewer and kind of drills down much easier. And if you haven't used Reliability Monitor, it is a fantastic utility. You should run it right now on your Windows machine. You'll be amazed at what it can tell you, but doesn't help you enable or disable startup applications. Not where you need to be, and only 1% of you thought that. Anyway, the correct answer, obviously, Task Manager. 89% of you got that one absolutely correct. Everything we've gone through today has come directly from the CompTIA exam objectives. So if you don't have these objectives, you need to do this right now. You need to pop open a new browser window, go to professormaster.com/objectives, and follow the link to get to the CompTIA website and download the objectives. They are an amazing checklist. That should be where you start your studies, should be where you end your studies, because you can use that as the checklist prior to taking the exam. This is also important that you have the latest version. And if you want to go to Google, type in CompTIA exam objectives, that's also going to get you there. at professormesser.com/objectives. We do one of these study groups every month. And so we've got another 2 A+ study groups already scheduled for November 2nd and November the 4th. We've also got Network Plus next week. On Tuesday, we've got Security Plus a week after that. And then when we get into November, Network Plus is going to be on the 10th, Security Plus on the 17th. Now, as you've seen, my schedule changes all the time, it seems. So although I've locked these dates down today, these can change at a moment's notice. So go to the calendar and either add my Google Calendar to yours so that when I move it, you will see it move, or keep checking in to professormesser.com/calendar, because sometimes my world gets a little chaotic and I have to end up shifting a lot of these around. That's what happened this week, where yesterday we did our 1001 study group. Today we're doing 1002. I don't usually do them back to back like that, but that's just how my schedule worked out to be able to do all of this. Make sure you check the calendar for when the next live event is going to be. Well, although the first hour is over, we're not even close to being done. Stick around for the after show. I'm going to take questions from the chat room. We'll open up the phone lines. We'll have you call in or ask questions there, and I can, whatever you'd like to talk about. Doesn't have to be about A+, doesn't have to be about IT. You can ask really anything. I think most of the questions we get are on those two topics. Don't forget about my course notes and practice exams at professormesser.com/1001success or 1002success. Both will work. The discount vouchers are always there, though. So when you're ready to take your exam, do not pay your full price for the vouchers. Go to professormesser.com/vouchers. Get a discount on the vouchers. Get a free exam hacks ebook, and you didn't have to scramble around for any ridiculous discount code somewhere and play that crazy game. Don't forget about following us. And if you liked this video, if you liked this live stream, it would be great if you click the thumbs up right now. It does mean a lot to us. It's not an ego thing. It's us making sure that YouTube and Google knows that you liked this video, because that helps me when I'm talking to my representative at YouTube and they say, wow, a lot of people like that. I'm like, yes, because they hit the thumbs up. So it does help us quite a bit when you do that. If you're watching this or any of my other videos, liking that video, subscribing to the channel, this is why we always hope and beg for you to hit those thumbs up, because it does help us also very much. Not just me, but if you're watching anybody on YouTube that you like, thumbs up and subscribe. It really does help them quite a bit and costs you nothing. So another great way to help support what we're doing here. Thanks for being here in the first hour. Stick around for the after show. We'd love to hear your calls. And thanks for joining us. We will see you next time on the A+ study group. Well, let's see if I can get the after show content going. This means I need to call into my own show. If you will bear with me a moment, there's nobody else here but me. So I have to kind of shift gears and readjust things on this side so that I am able to call in to my own show. The call-in side of the show is all done in the cloud through a third-party service. So I have to kind of start things up on my side. I have to change some graphics. We have to get rid of that other lower third. There's so much going on. I should really probably get somebody to help me with this, but that's just the way it goes right now. If you'll bear with me, I'm going to call in to my show. We're going to make some beeping noises here in just a moment. And I'm going to press a pound key, and the nice lady will ask me for...
Enter your 6-digit PIN.
Well, I think I'll do that by simply typing it in with my mouse, which is not very easy. Did I do it right?
Welcome, Professor Messer.
Thanks, nice lady. Well, that means that you can join us as well by visiting or calling. You can visit the chat room. I will take questions from the chat room, but you can also call using voice communication. That's correct. Over a telephone by using this toll-free number in the continental U.S., 855-785-RJ45. West of the Rockies is 855-785-7545. If you are outside of the continental U.S., you can still call in for free using Skype, because you can call in with Skype without any type of Skype minutes if it's a toll-free number. So I pay for it. You can just put a +1 at the beginning, +1, 855-785-7545. You can call in that way as well. Plenty ways to do it. So if you are, by the way, some of you are asking, was there a continuing education unit word today? There was, and you'll have to wait until the replay because you'll have to, that's the whole secret, of course, is you have to be here and listening and follow the right order of tasks to be able to do that. So that's where we get that from. Thank you for your recommendations earlier on what courses you would love to see. I'm in this planning mode right now where I'm working through Network Plus and I'm thinking about fixing to work on A+. There's a lot going on with A+ coming up, but I'm already looking past that. I'm trying to figure out what is the best way to go with that. So your input is incredibly valuable. Thank you for sending that along. Very useful to me. In the chat room, some folks asking about the vouchers. The vouchers can't be combined with codes. The vouchers on my site don't have codes. You don't have to have a code. It's just discounted, period. You're done. So no codes required. That's the benefit of having them there. And in many cases, the price of the vouchers on my site is less expensive than what you would have spent on another site with codes. That's the goal. A+ is being updated. It's been out for about 3 years, so we'll have new A+ videos, later on next year. There's still going to be a while before those ever show up. Everything got pushed, I guess, for some reason. I'm not sure why. Something might be going on in the world, but it has delayed Security Plus. It delayed Network Plus, and it's probably going to delay A+ just a bit, just by a few months. But it's pushed things out a little bit. So I'm fully expecting there will be some exam objectives that I can get my hands on internally within the CompTIA partners, probably the January timeframe. So you're not going to see a new course coming out until later on in 2022 from anybody, from CompTIA or anybody. But always keep checking back on the CompTIA website. Maybe they'll surprise me. Maybe they'll surprise all of us, and it'll be something completely different than what we were expecting. This is just pure speculation on my part. So that's what I think is going to happen, but always check the CompTIA website. They will be the best place for you to go. It's never too late to start studying. If you're studying A+ right now, study the 221001, study the 221002. I fully expect that these are still going to be around at this time next year. So keep studying. Get your certification now. Never, never, never wait to get certified. Get the certification, put it in your pocket, show it to a prospective employer. Having the certification now is much, much more important than you waiting for some reason. Never wait to be certified. It's much too valuable to do that. Let's go to the phone lines. Let's start with the 917 area code. Hi, caller. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Hi, my name is Nicholas. I'm calling from the UK.
From the UK. Thank you for calling. What can we do for you?
Professor Mesa, just call once again to say thank you for this. The thing is, in my area is about 6 o'clock. I'm working like night shifts at 8 o'clock, so it's ideal for me here. Like when I wake up at 5 o'clock to have Professor Messer and start my day and do the CompTIA A plus and basically have the opportunity to do something for myself, something I do like a lot.
Good for you. Thank you. I appreciate that.
I'm just waiting for some, if I may request some vouchers from for Europe, if that's possible.
It is possible. It's just that I don't currently offer it at the moment. So let me bring folks in to kind of how the voucher system works for CompTIA. For those of you that have checked out my vouchers page, I'm going to pull this up on the screen so that people watching can kind of get a feel for this. This voucher page has all of the vouchers for CompTIA. If you purchase them, they're all good for about a year, minus a couple days, but basically 360 days. They're good for a good bit of time. But they're only currently, the ones on my site are only currently available for North America, which in the CompTIA terms is Canada, United States, and United States territories. So technically Guam and Puerto Rico, although not in North America, would apply to that. This gets into a little bit of a sticky wicket with dealing with foreign purchases, dealing with the with CompTIA being able to properly show when products and where products were purchased from, because the taxing and the revenue recognition process when you're dealing with multiple countries can be very complex. So on the CompTIA store, they are separated out into different countries. So for those of you that haven't been to the CompTIA store, let me bring that one up for you as well. Here's the CompTIA store. There's a link right at the top. Currently, it's set to North America. But if I wanted to set it to Europe, and then I wanted to choose United Kingdom on the list, you'll notice that the store changes to be United Kingdom. That means that any of the vouchers that I could purchase here for you would be vouchers for the United Kingdom only. So this means that I did a big spreadsheet for every country in the world and all of the different stores that CompTIA has. There's like 10 or 11 or 12 different stores that you would have to use overall. Mm-hmm. So this complicates and the management process for me on the back end for purchasing things from the UK store. I would need to purchase them because they're only offered in pounds. So I need to purchase them in pound sterling. I would then have them available for people in the UK to purchase. So it is possible. It's just a little bit more involved than what I'm able to do at the moment. But my plan is to make it so that I am able to do this in the future, because I've already heard from people in the UK, in Australia, in Korea, in other places around the world that would like to have access to these vouchers at a better price and to have some of the advantages and the add-ons that come with it. But we just aren't quite ready to pull the trigger on it yet, but I am working on it. It's a little bit more involved than what I would have hoped, but I think it's one that I will be able to do. It doesn't have any significant problems of me doing it. I think I'm able to make it happen. It's just a matter of me putting together the right process on my side so that I'm able to offer it to you without there being delays for you, without me messing up the process. I get one shot at this. When I send you a voucher code, that voucher code has got to work. So there's a whole bunch of things on my side I need to make sure are running right. Your recommendation, though, is spot on. It's something I do need to work towards and have available in the list of things. And it's just not something I have right at the moment. I apologize.
Thank you so much. Because the thing is now, basically, I have basically to pay like full pound. It's about like both of Core 1 and Core 2 is about like 700 pounds or 600. It's 300 pounds each, which in dollars will be $800.
Right. It's pretty expensive.
It is.
Yeah. Anything would be advantageous. I will say, and I do mention this on my voucher page, if you're a student, this applies also to only North America, I'm afraid. But if you're a student in North America, there are vouchers available at the academic CompTIA store. There's a pretty big discount for college students to be able to purchase that. That's one option. If you're outside the U.S., the best I can really offer is to find a provider in your country, and very often those providers may have discount codes that you could apply on the Pearson VUE website. That might be an option as well. Sometimes books will have voucher codes in them or voucher code discounts inside of them. It's just a process of finding the right combination for your particular geography. Sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, yeah, I'm just basically pushing through the A+, so I can take it before it expires, basically, because that's my biggest fear now, that I will not take the exam until it expires.
Well, one of the things it is something to consider. Of course, the timing of a new exam coming out, and really not really the timing of a new exam, but the retirement of the existing exam is always something you should keep an eye on. Because if you're someone like me that takes a long time to study, you may think, I've got a year, but is a year really enough? I think for the vast majority of people taking the exam, a year is plenty of time. But there's probably a subset of you that are planning to take this exam where you need some extra time. So always keep checking back the CompTIA website. Always keep your eye on that. But even if you miss the retirement date, what if the retirement date sneaks up on you? You know, life happens. You started the studies, you're in the middle of it, and suddenly you realize the retirement date is already here and you're not going to be able to pass both of these. I can't imagine that the new version of the exam is going to be so dramatically different that you would lose a lot once the new exam is out. So there might be advantage.
The whole practice cannot change within a day.
Right. I think there will, of course, be, I would expect that, or I would hope that they would put Windows 11 on the new exam. I would hope they would update some of the networking pieces. There might be changes to the cloud section or the security section, but I overall think they're probably going to be very minor. So don't worry about a retirement. Don't worry about this happened to sneak up on you, because I think everyone will be able to pivot and be able to work with a new exam without much of a problem whatsoever.
Professor, I have one more question.
Sure.
Since the windows are just changing rapidly, like the inside basically, why not CompTIA, since it just basically is focused for IT professionals? Why not basically focus on the PowerShell basically? That not so many things can change there so rapidly. Because the thing is, at the end of the day, the windows are just focusing for the end user, the client basically. But as professionals, why we don't have an adequate sort of a chapter for PowerShell, to learn PowerShell, to learn some commands, and instead of going through the windows or the designated window, we can just put the command to the PowerShell and do our jobs.
I don't disagree with that. I think that the Linux side, I think they figured that out pretty well. You'll notice in Linux, if you look at the Linux Plus or the Red Hat certifications, you'll notice everything in those certifications is from the perspective of somebody working at the command line, even though there's a very robust set of graphical desktop options available for Linux. But if you've ever managed Linux systems, you know that for the vast majority of those servers, there's absolutely everybody working at the command line. There is no desktop available, and that's why they teach to that. You could effectively do the same thing in Windows. Teach to the PowerShell command line, and don't worry about where certain utilities might be in Windows. Don't worry about how to get to the services module. Simply manage the services from the command line. The problem, of course, is that that is the most efficient way to do it, no question. It's the most easiest way from an automation perspective, no question. But unfortunately, not everyone working as a Windows administrator is comfortable at the command line, and many people prefer operating the operating system from the graphical front end. And the direction that CompTIA tends to make with their exams is based on feedback that they get from their corporate partners and their governmental partners that say, we want our users, our technicians, to be able to work this way. So they're sort of taking the lead in some ways in that area as well. I don't disagree, though. Command line is so effective and so efficient, and it works so well that maybe adding more command line, especially PowerShell, to the A+ would be fantastic. I agree.
Yeah, just one small chapter, basically how to adjust the PowerShell basically to do it. Because the thing is, the PowerShell or the bash in Linux, when you see it, it's just very dry. Now, if you add some plugins and you make it a little bit more, fancy, as I call it that way, it can do a lot of things. It can be really awesome, really awesome PowerShell.
I think you are absolutely correct. You've probably heard me in previous study groups say that if you want to get a leg up, you want to differentiate yourself in technology, you want to be someone who provides value to your organization, become very familiar with PowerShell, become very familiar with Python, or both. And I think that those are two skills that are underrepresented in the industry, in my opinion, that provide a huge advantage to the people that know these technologies. It's a perfect place to start studying, and why wouldn't you?
These are two skills that do the job and pay the bills, I think.
There it is. That's exactly correct. I appreciate that. Thank you for your support. I appreciate the call, and best of luck.
Thank you. Thank you.
I think that anybody in IT, and I know we're talking A+ right now, so it's sort of the entry-level certification of what we happen to be doing, but that's where people really move. As you find this niche that nobody else is addressing, you take everything you possibly can find about that niche. You learn about it. You become familiar with it. You become a master of it. You start really understanding how to make it perform. And then all of a sudden, you're more valuable. You move up in the organization. You move out of the organization somewhere else. You make more money. You learn the skills. It pays the bills. I couldn't have said it better. That's really what it's doing. In the chat room, people asking when the next Security Plus study group happens to be. It's all on the calendar. Go to professormesser.com/calendar to learn when all of the next study groups will be. Let's go back to the phones. The 602 area code. Hi, caller. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Hi, Professor Messer. I am calling from Phoenix, Arizona.
Thanks for calling.
Yeah, I just want to say first to give like a big thank you. I should have done this a couple of months ago, but I didn't really have the opportunity. But I really appreciate you having all of the A+ courses, the video courses for free, and also I paid for your notes and your practice exams
thank
for
you.
both the 102 and 1002, 1001 and 1002 exams. Sorry, I'm a little bit of a nervous talker, so if I stutter.
You're doing great.
Yeah, sorry about that. But yeah, your course did help. Your Core 1 videos did help me get on track of passing my exam, which thankfully I did pass my first try, let's say, I think around June, early June. And yeah, just wanted to say thanks. And I'm still tackling Core 2. It's just I've been struggling a lot with my earlier I made a lot of mistakes from just kind of taking it back to back. And I don't know if it was just me, but Core 2 just feels a lot more difficult compared to Core 1. Probably because I was at the time, like when I was taking the Core 1 exam, I finished building my computer, and I was like, okay, I was very familiar with the hardware stuff.
Right.
And I was very surprised I built my computer because during the chip shortages, I was just very lucky. But, thankfully that did help refresh my memory and did help me pass the Core 1 exam.
I think this is what a lot of people run into, though, when they're trying to figure out and go through these exams. I think they don't realize these are two very different exams in style and form. The content, of course, is very different. It's hardware. Many people will separate them out as hardware versus operating system, which isn't hardware versus software, which isn't necessarily a good description, but it's effective enough. But the Core 1, to me, tends to have a lot of memorization in it. There's port numbers, there's identifying speeds and feeds. And so there's a lot of that style of learning. Then you shift to Core 2, there's not a lot of memorization in Core 2. It's troubleshooting. It's more of dynamic thinking, of problem solving. It's a different form of an exam, I think, in my mind. And so I think a lot of people aren't ready for that. They think it's going to be another exam asking about the upgrade path for certain versions of Windows, but in reality, they get a very complex question that happens to include something dealing with an upgrade and ultimately is asking more about another issue entirely. It is a different exam. And for people that have already worked with Windows for a long time, they come to me and say, well, I think the 1002 is a much easier exam. I've been working with Windows forever. Similar to your story where you built your own computer, of course you're going to be familiar with the power supply connector type. So it's just one of those things. I say stick with it. If you haven't downloaded and this is for everybody who's watching, if you haven't downloaded the free Windows images from Microsoft, you need to do that, of course, and run that in your system. You can find those by going to modern.ie, modern.ie, as in the modern world, thoroughly modern, Millie, modern.ie. This is a Microsoft site. It's made for developers. But on this site, they have a tools pull-down menu. And in that tools pull-down menu is a set of virtual machines. They provide you with VMs for Windows 7, Windows 8.1, and Windows 10, all for free. As long as you don't use them in a production mode, they are free for you to use. So if you're not comfortable with Windows and you're not running Windows on your system, or you're not familiar enough with Windows 8.1 or Windows 7, this is a great one to use, and they work across many different virtual machine platforms: VirtualBox, Vagrant, VMware, Hyper-V, and Parallels. So this is probably one that you either have installed or would be very easy for you to install for free on your system. And it's just a free tool. So if you're struggling with the 1002 and you want these particular virtual machines to work with, it's modern.ie, as in Internet Explorer, because that's what this is built for, is to troubleshoot and work with apps in Internet Explorer, or now, of course, in Edge. But modern.ie is a great place to go for that. And that might help you, or might help anyone else who's trying to get through that 1002. It can be a struggle, but it can absolutely be one that you can become more familiar with. You can read through some of the questions that I've written and get a better feel for what you might be asked on that particular exam.
Oh, I actually did not know that. Though I did download the VirtualBox a couple of months ago.
Oh, great.
With both I think I have Ubuntu and Windows 10, but I should probably get 8.1 and 7.
You could be asked about either one, sure. They don't have Windows Server on the site. People on the chat room are asking about that. Windows Server does have a separate evaluation download that you can download for 90 days, but that's on a different website, a different Microsoft website. And Windows Server is a little bit out of scope for the A+ exam, but if you're trying to get into more Windows administration, that'd be a good one to set up as well.
Oh, yeah, for sure. I mean, with the Core 2 exams, with the stuff that's asking for Windows, it's a lot of I use Windows very basically. I just either do it for schoolwork or just, scroll through the internet and play games, but nothing like the administrator stuff or mess around with the MTC, which I probably should do it sometime. But yeah, I just use it for the very basics, even though I do know how to troubleshoot the very basics as well.
Get the exam objectives, use those as your checklist, go through every utility they mention in the exam objectives, go through every command line they mention in the exam objectives, and that's going to get you quite a long way down the road, because as you're doing that, you're also learning some of the troubleshooting parts, which of course come up later on in that particular exam. So kind of covers two bases if you can become very familiar with those.
Yeah, I do need that checklist, because honestly, I do struggle with the troubleshooting questions sometimes. And I've also been taking the Dion training exams. I bought it a couple months ago, but I was doing the recent exams. It's strange because those questions I'm pretty sure you've heard it a million times about these stories, but those exams are just really tough. And it's strange because I did my first attempt it was a big mistake. I took my first attempt the 31st of July, and I got a 660 on my first shot, which, it wasn't terrible, but
it's close.
I was too hard on myself. And and I should not have taken a month break, honestly, because I just felt every time when I try to study, I just always think about overthink too much or saying,
right.
I can't believe, And it doesn't help with those practice exams. I get a lower score than my actual exam. It's just, I don't know. It's a very strange feeling.
The good part, though, is you've already been through the exam. You kind of have a feel for the type of questions they're asking. And in fact, if you go to third-party study materials and they're asking things are not in the same style or vein as the existing exam, you can kind of dismiss those and what they're asking of you. The real key is just to keep going, keep studying, plan for the next one. Some people like to go ahead and book their exam even though it's in the future, so that they have something to shoot for. Other people like me, I like to book my exam the day before. I don't like to put that level of pressure on myself, but just use those exam objectives as your guideline, and you're so close to the passing number, I think you're going to do fine.
Yeah, for sure. I gotta, I've been actually studying more efficiently, just actually writing handwritten notes and using what's the other book? The A+ from Mike Myers.
Sure.
That's a really good resource as well. And also, that's another mistake that I had, because when I was first studying, I honestly used most of your resources, which is very good, but at the same time, I need to learn more from a different perspective to actually understand it much better.
As always mentioned, everybody learns differently. Some people prefer multiple types of learning materials from different sources. Find the combination that works for you and use them.
Yeah, for sure.
Best of luck with that. You're so close. Keep doing what you're doing. Make sure you get the exam objectives. Download those VMs. I think you're going to find a lot of great stuff inside of there.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Yeah, I need to stop being so hard on myself. But, yeah, I appreciate you just talking. Best of luck with it.
Thanks for calling.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for all your free resources. Once I'm done with A+, I'll move on to Network+, hopefully.
Sounds good. We hope to see you over there. Best of luck, and let us know how it goes.
Yeah, for sure.
Thanks for calling. That's something I think we could all plan on doing differently in our studies. Do we have the right study materials? Are we using the things we should be using? For example, here is the exam objectives. I mention the exam objectives all the time. But for example, here's section 1.5 of the exam objectives. Given a scenario, use Microsoft operating system features and tools. So they list out all of the features and tools you should know. Computer management, device manager, local users and groups, local security policy, performance monitor, services, system configuration, task scheduler. If you've only used Windows as a user, you've probably never even seen these. So make sure you go through them. And you'll notice in my videos, I go through these in this order. I demonstrate every single one of these. I show you screenshots of all of them. Some of them have even detailed demonstrations that I do. The MS config utility, the task manager utility, the disk management utility, the system utilities. It's all in here. So this is a great checklist to use for your A+. Make sure you get your hands on the exam objectives. Before we go back to the phones, thanks for holding for so long. Those of you on the phone from Big Mo, from Georgia, from Tennessee, I'll be with you in just a moment. Question in the chat room: how different is the N10-008 exam from the N10-007? This is the answer is kind of extensive. Actually, there's quite a bit of difference between those two. Both of these exams are available right now. If you're planning to take one right now, I highly recommend that you take the N10-007, because the N10-008 books aren't even out yet. There's just not enough in these. There's just not enough time. This is a relatively new exam for the N10-007 to be working towards. So I've got a list here of the N10-007 changes, or the changes to the N10-008, and working through them if I can find it. I have this somewhere. Let me search for the Network Plus info. I think I have a breakdown of it here somewhere. There it is, the objectives. So on the N10-008 objectives, what I did was take every objective. I listed out the objectives that were covered in both the 7 and the 8, but then there's a number of objectives that are brand new. You can see those are listed in here. The ultimate answer for what you're looking for is this summary here, is that there are 588 objectives, separate bullets, in the N10-008. That's an increase from the 499 that were in the N10-007. So it's slightly larger than the N10-007, but not significantly larger. The new objectives, the things that are totally new, because they threw out some of the old 007, they brought in new 008 objectives, 235 new objectives. When you only have 588 to start with, That means 40% of the N10008 is brand new content when compared to the N10007. That's a significant percentage when you're planning to take an exam. And that's why I tell people, if you're studying Network Plus right now, you should probably be studying the N10007 because there's just not a lot of N10008 books and materials available right now. That's improving as time goes on, but this is just another one of those bullet points, those statistical bullet points that might help you in the process of determining what you should be doing. 007 is the one to go with right now. Back to the phone lines. Let's go to the 573 area code. Hi, caller. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Hi, my name is Ted, and I'm calling from North Carolina.
Hey, Ted. Thanks for calling. What can we do for you?
So I've been, I think I started my IT career sometime in 2016. I went to a local community college just to get my feet wet.
Great.
I've been a student of yours since about 2017. And really, to get right to the point, I had no idea what I wanted to do. And I started off as technical support. I jumped over to cybersecurity, and then and for the most part, that's where I feel somewhat comfortable in.
Great.
But really what I'm calling to ask about is, I've been at this for so long now, 5 years, 6 years passes by in the blink of an eye. And really, there's two questions I just want to ask is, how long did it take? Because, there's so many certifications, there's so many exams, and there's so many different paths in IT. How long did it take you personally to find your way in the IT umbrella? And the other question is, how do you avoid burnout? Because as I'm sure you know, there's just, again, there's so many pathways to go, but not only that, there's, certification on certification on certification. And it almost just feels like no matter what you do, you've only scratched the surface. You know what I mean? Like, it never really, to me, it still doesn't even feel like I'm a journeyman, if that makes any sense.
Oh, it absolutely does. And that is a sort of something that's pervasive in IT, because IT, we tend to think of IT in my parents think of IT as, can you help me fix the laptop? That's how they see technology. Technology is everything inside that laptop. But of course, we know the technology in IT is so broad. We're dealing with data centers and technology, databases, email systems, the cloud, operating systems in Windows, Linux, Mac OS, security, firewalls, intrusion prevention, cloud-based malware detection. You've got everywhere you look, there's something new, and it's impossible for one human being to have a complete knowledge of all of these different technologies. You just can't do it. You will never learn everything you need to learn. And on top of that, by the way, the entire industry changing every year. When I started in technology, there was no internet. There was no Facebook. There was no Google. There was no Yahoo. The idea of having high-speed networking and doing this in the cloud was kind of a pipe dream. We had an idea that someday the industry would get there. If you go back and look at Bill Gates talking about information at your fingertips, he was talking about this crazy idea that we would have some type of tablet or mobile computing device that we would take with us. He would demonstrate this as somebody delivering packages, and they would deliver packages with this electronic clipboard of some kind, and people would just sign with a stylus or something. We saw the demonstration of this and thought, well, that's never going to happen. That's just crazy talk. But these days, that's just normal. That's how we live today. That's just how it works. The whole industry under our feet is constantly evolving. So as soon as you learn a technology, that technology has changed or a new one has come along to replace it. This is normal. This is the way IT works. So you asked me, when did I start to get my feet under me? When did I start to feel comfortable in IT? Part of me would tell you that, oh, that never happened. I'm still trying to keep up. I'm still trying to pull myself along. There's still new things I have to learn all the time. IT, and I think some people don't realize it when they get into the industry, is one where you're always learning something new. You're always trying to find knowledge of what you happen to be working on. And the thing you're working on, you never know everything about it. There's no way to learn every possible nuance of every possible technology. But that's normal. You just kind of have to get used to the fact that you will constantly be having to say, I'm not sure, but I'm going to go ask some people who do know. We'll put together an answer and we'll get back with you. That's just a normal part of your life in IT, because there will be things you know immediately off the top of your head. There will be many more things that you can't possibly know off the top of your head, and you have to now work your way into understanding more of this. I will say, though, that once I did a lot of field service work in the very beginning. I would start at the beginning of the day. I would collect all the bare materials that I needed, the motherboards and the hard drives and the memory modules, and I would go off to people's offices and I would install this equipment. So there are certain things, like after a few months of that, you get pretty good at installing memory. You get pretty good at swapping out a drive for a warranty repair. And it used to be these IBM computers we would use had these big thumb screws on the back. You pull off the top, the hard drive modularly popped out. You pop in the new one, you put the cover on, you do the thumb screws, and 60 seconds later you were finished. It was like a rodeo. You're tying up the calf and you're done. Like, yes, I did it. And you're off to the next thing. And you get really good at doing that. And then all of a sudden, everything changes. The industry changes. You get a new job. I got a job working in a corporate environment, in a life insurance company, and we started doing a lot more with Windows. We started having higher speed networks, and I started learning other technologies. You have to keep doing that. You have to constantly be pushing yourself to understand what's happening behind the scenes or to become an expert in a particular niche. I do mention this from time to time on the study groups, is where I really started to see value in this. Probably the place where I really got my legs under me was with a particular project where there was some middleware devices that were connecting people's computers, their laptops and their desktop computers, to get access to, at the time, a mainframe. This was a very important connection when you're working in a financial organization because everything was on the mainframe. This middleware that we were using would crash multiple times a day. And if you were in the middle of doing something on the mainframe and it crashed, your session was reset and all the work you were doing was wasted. And plus, to mention, you weren't able to actually do any work while that system was rebooting itself. It was very frustrating to the end users, and obviously they were complaining it was very frustrating to us. So my boss came to me and said, I need you to fix this. And I said, I don't know anything. I don't even know what you're talking about. I don't even know what middleware is. Well, he says, well, now you have to learn it. So go. Get out of my office, go grab the manuals. And that's what I did. I went to the devices, I grabbed the manuals. And here's the thing that I think helps people the most in IT is you have to be comfortable with knowing that you don't know something. You have to be willing to ask people and say, I know nothing about this box. I heard you talking about this box last week. What do you know about it? So I started almost interviewing the people I worked with. Oh, yeah, they put that in 3 years ago. It's never worked right. Oh, yeah, we have a contract with them. You should call them. And maybe they can help you with. I go, oh, we have a contract. Okay. So you learn all these things. You start just being a sponge. And I find that I am much more receptive to learning when I admit that I know nothing about what I am doing. So I can be the dummy in the room. And as soon as you're comfortable being the dummy in the room, you start learning more. People are very good in IT. The group of people you will work with are so willing to help. So they will jump right in and they will say, well, here's how I think what's going on here. So in this particular project, I ended up looking at the product, reading through the entire manual. At this time, there was no internet to go to. So I had to get on a telephone and call them, the technical support line. And they said, oh, yeah, we can help you troubleshoot this. We do this all the time. Here's what we can do to start with. And we put together a plan. We started implementing the plan. And after about a week or two of making some configuration changes with the software, the system stopped resetting themselves every day. Suddenly, they became completely stable. They worked the way the company intended for them to work. I did some software updates. I corrected some changes and made some changes to the configuration file. Suddenly, it was using memory the right way. It wasn't crashing at all. It would run for days, weeks at a time. We would have a standard setup where we would still reboot it every once in a while because we weren't completely comfortable with it. So in our normal maintenance was to update it every week or so, or reset it every week or so. And it ran like a champ for years. Something at that point, I became the expert in the system. So they would come to me with any questions about that thing. And it no longer became the system that nobody wanted to touch. You know, if you've ever worked in a data center, you know there's a machine over there and everybody tells you, don't reboot that machine. Whatever you do, don't touch that. We have no idea how that machine runs. We pretty much think there's evil inside. And as long as we don't bother it, the evil will continue to work properly. But the reality is it's just a computer. It has an operating system. It probably has a configuration file. There's a set of programs running on it. That's what you should be doing, is learning more about how that system works and becoming the expert of it. And once I became knowledgeable and the expert in that piece, they go, well, if you're the expert in that, you could be the expert in other things. So they were more willing to give me more responsibility. They gave me more of a higher rating at the end of the year, which translated to a higher amount of pay. And I was able to take these skills that I was learning and eventually leave the company and go work for another company making even more money. So that's why I tell people, don't worry that you feel like you're always fighting or moving upstream, because guess what? You are. It's just always normal. There will always be something to learn. There will always be a technology to figure out. There will always be a challenge, and there will always be things you don't know. But if you're willing to say, I don't know, but I know how I can find the answer to this. That's all people want. They don't care that you don't know right off the top of your head. They want you to be able to fix it, give them an expectation of when you may be working on this, what the process might be, and then take it from there. And everybody I've ever worked with, up until the last job I had working for a third-party company, was working as a senior systems engineer for Palo Alto Networks, where you are effectively considered to be the expert in this product. And every meeting I went into, there was always a question from somebody. After working there for 7 years, you'd still get questions you didn't know the answer to. So it's always useful to be someone who can say, I know this much, but the question you're asking, I don't know, but I do know who knows the answer, and I'll get back with you on that. And then you do that. I think that's one of the best things you could do in IT. It's going to help you grow as a technologist. It's going to help you become a better interpersonal relationship with other people that you work with. And ultimately, you continue to go up the ranks of IT, ideally, ostensibly, making more money, moving into better jobs, having a better quality of life for you and your family. And that's what we're all shooting for when we're working through this. That's sort of a long answer, Ted, to what you're asking, but hopefully it gives you some insight.
Oh, no, it does. It definitely does. It's, I suppose some of my insecurities just come from the fact that, nobody else in my family does anything of this sort. I come from a very, if you couldn't tell already from the voice, I come from a extremely blue collar family. So every time I go to my studies and I learn about, and then I get into situations like this where, as you were explaining, where I really don't know. And oftentimes I go into a classroom or a lecture hall and, everybody in there looks as if, it kind of takes you back to like elementary school days, right? Everybody in there looks as if they belong there. And then I feel like the odd man out. But typically it always feels like I'm on the lower end of, like the learning curve. And of course I go back to my family and it always feels like, it's like, am I doing the right thing? Am I learning things correctly? Am I learning at the right pace? And I really wanted to call because, as I mentioned, I've been a student of yours since at least 2017, and I'm just now finally getting my A+ certification. I'm taking the 1002 at the end of this month.
Great.
And hopefully I will pass it. I just passed the Core 1 2 weeks ago, so I think it's finally time to tackle some of these certifications.
just get comfortable. For anybody else who's listening, get comfortable in those rooms. I would go to a lot of corporate training as a systems engineer for the past, I guess, the last 20, 25 years of my IT career. I guess it's not over. I guess what I'm doing now is sort of IT career, but working for someone else, I was a systems engineer. We would go to training all the time. And I found that if I was the one sitting on the front row of the training, that I would put my hand up and go, could you go through that again? Because I have no idea what you're talking about. Because I didn't. I wasn't catching it. And they would go, sure, we'll rewind, we'll go through it. People would always come up afterwards saying, well, I'm really glad you asked him to go over that because I had no idea what was going on. I said, well, why didn't you say anything? Like, oh, I don't want to say that I don't know because then it will look like I'm a dummy. Like, well, I have no problem saying I'm a dummy. So if it helps everyone else in the room to rewind and go back through, I think I'm fine doing that. And I think if we can be the dummy in the room, we can sit on the front row, we can put our hands up and do these things. I think ultimately we become better at what we are doing. And to your point about blue collar, I grew up in a very remote part of Florida. The county that I grew up in still to this day does not have a red, yellow, green traffic light. My first job was literally working in the fields with a hoe. So I was in agriculture, working as a field worker out there. This was as far away from technology as you could ever hope to be. And if I can get into technology, if I can learn this and I can tell people this is totally learnable by somebody who used to work in the fields, I can do this. So that means you can do this too. I think that really can apply across the board in IT.
Right. Thank you very much for your time. I really appreciate it.
Appreciate the call, Ted. Best of luck with that 1002. Let us know how it goes.
Of course. Bye-bye.
This is something everybody in IT can do. It's the reason I do this now. It's the reason that I tell people this is one of the most exciting fields to work in because there is complete upward mobility. There is options everywhere. What do you want to do? What technology you want to work with? There's a job for that. Do you want to stay at home or do you want to travel? There's a job for that. Do you want to work more on the technical side or more on the troubleshooting side or more on the management side? There are jobs for that. So you get to decide what you want to do. You just need to figure that out, which is sometimes the hardest part, and then go do that because the openings are out there and available. You just need to go after those jobs. Back to the thanks for holding for so long, the 731 area code. Hi, caller. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Hello, my name is Nathan Crenshaw from
Nathan.
Martin, Tennessee.
Appreciate you calling, Nathan. What can we do for you?
So, basically, I just got a notification that you were live, and I just recently passed both of the Core 1 and Core 2 of A+.
Nice.
And starting on Network Plus now at school. I go to a tech college. It's a state-run program for, it's a tech school, right? And everything we do is hands-on. Everything we do is, you learn it by doing it.
Great.
Rather than a college course at a traditional school where you learn about it and do a lab via the computer, but, that's not what I wanted. But basically, I wanted to get on and tell you that your course is by far the biggest help in me passing those two exams.
Oh, that's great.
By far none. I mean, our curriculum at school, we use Certify as like the foundation material.
Yep.
So we have all the courses and stuff, and then we have the practice exams and whatnot. Those are all fine and dandy, but it's very simplified questions that are not at all remotely close to what what you should expect from the actual exam themselves. And I subscribed to Jason Dion through Udemy, I believe it was. I went through him. I watched a bunch of animated PowerShell videos or something. This guy's great too, but your exams are the closest thing to the actual CompTIA exams that I could find. And it just blows me away that you give that stuff out just, I guess, to kind of see your heart. And I just really wanted to say thank you, because without your help, I don't think I really would have passed.
So glad to hear it. It's one of those things where CompTIA does have a particular style. They have a way of asking questions that if you aren't prepared for it and you walk into one of those exams, some people are completely surprised. I have no idea that it was going to be that style of question, and in many cases don't do well on the exam. I write every single one of my questions. They are all personally written. They're all original questions. It's important to me that you get kind of a different perspective in the questions and the topics, but I want to keep the same flavor, the same style that CompTIA asks. So I've spent a lot of time not necessarily looking at what they're asking, but looking at how they're asking it so that I can ask questions a similar way. And hopefully that's coming across in the practice questions. It sounds like it is. But I think that's a very important part of the exam, because you don't want to be walk into the exam and suddenly you're not prepared at all for this structure of questioning that is being asked of you, which is hard enough if your English is your first language. But a number of people that watch my videos, English is not their first language, which is even more of a challenge. So it just is more motivating for me to make sure I get that piece of it right. I think it's an important part of studying.
It definitely is. I think that, the CompTIA, no, not the CompTIA, the U Certify, and, Jason Dion, his stuff was great also, but the style of questions they would ask, it was, like, what is DNS, right? So
yeah, you're not getting one of those.
Read a textbook, tell you, anybody can brain dump what is DNS, but it's what does DNS do and why is DNS important? And that's the kind of questions you don't get on the other material that I've covered. And I think with yours, by far the hardest ones I took, taking yours, all the practice material that you've gone through, I was like, man, these are really, really hard, which is a good thing, honestly, because it prepared me for the actual exam. And I got to the exam, and the main thing everyone says to do is don't do the PBQs right off the bat. You want to wait, go back to them. That's fine and dandy. On my first exam, it was 1001. I had 6 or 7 PBQs out of 75 questions total. And I skipped every single one of them, did the entire exam. I had like 20 flags for review at the end of it, went through, redid all those. And then my timer ran out. I didn't have a single minute left to do any of the PBQs because I guess I was just overthinking everything. But I still walked away with a 737 as my ending score.
Nice.
And that's with no PBQs. And I'm not sure, there's no clear answer if the PBQs are weighted heavier than the standard questions.
There isn't. We all struggle with trying to figure out how the grading scale works on these exams, and nobody knows for sure. I always like hearing stories like this, though, because a number of people will say, well, obviously the performance-based questions are heavily weighted and you have to be able to answer them. And then I hear stories like yours where maybe that's actually not the case. Maybe they don't have the weighting we think they do. I think it changes from time to time as well. So it may just be very specific to the exam you took and when you took it. But there's hope for all of us if that's the case.
Oh, yeah. And I think with your material, there's just really nothing better. The manuals that you put together, it's all gold, man. It's all out. And you might have to pay, and I think it's a very small price to pay. I think yours is $100 to get like the entire package. Mm-hmm. That is such a fundamentally I don't want to say it, that's a big brain move, That is gold right there.
Well, I appreciate
and I think that what you're doing is great.
I appreciate it because we do spend a lot of time, and the watchword of what we do here is to create the highest quality study materials that we can. Not everybody in this industry has worked in this industry as a technologist. I have a bit of an advantage in that perspective, because I've worked as a systems engineer, a network technician, an operating system administrator. I've been in the trenches and doing those things, and I've taken these certification exams, probably taken 20, 25 certification exams over my entire career, may even be more than that. So I kind of have a history and a philosophy that I want to bring to the table that says, what do other people need that's going to get them through this exam? Can I give them the technology or the quality of questions that is something that's going to be able to get them over the top? And that's sort of the watchword as we go through this. I'm glad that it's something that has helped you as well.
Definitely. And that's what I'm 25. I have no background in IT. I was always interested in, what's the latest, smartphone out there, what's the latest computer, but I never had a formal training or education in technology until about a year ago when I started doing this. And with your help, that's what I am now is all really thanks to you and my teachers alike, because I went from absolutely no idea what you said the word BIOS to me. I had no idea what that was, or even something as simple as SATA, right? I had no idea what that meant. I could watch a Linux Tech Tips video and hear them say that, but it didn't make sense to me. I didn't know what they were referencing. Now, everything I've learned in the past year alone is just phenomenal, and I'm very, very appreciative.
I always interpreted, or my perspective of learning things in IT was like I just learned a magic trick. Every time I finally got a topic, I'm like, oh, that's how that works. Down to the level of studying for the 1000 or the A+ for the first time, like, oh, that I plugged in hundreds of memory modules and then suddenly read a topic on how memory actually works. Right? Oh, that's how that works. You just have no concept unless you sit down and really get into the details of it. And it's something that through my entire career has always been, oh, that's how that works. Oh, we're working with IP addressing. We're working with DNS. We're working with BGP. We're working with route redistribution inside of a firewall. We're working with cloud-based malware detect. Oh, that's how that works. And I love the discovery. I love the learning and the surprise that comes with interpreting and really understanding how that technology works. I think it is the part of IT that is refreshing, that keeps people going, that encourages me to keep doing things with technology as well.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. It's there's never a dull moment for me. It's always, what can I learn? What can I do? Because, I mean, like you said earlier, you're never going to know everything.
Nope.
And once you discover something, or once you learn in the next chapter, let's say, then you apply it, you do it, you physically hands-on learn the material, and that's the best way. And there's always something next. There's never a dull moment. It's really Pandora's box in that regard. You should never stagnate. There's always something more, and the way technology moves at this day and age, you can learn everything there is to know today, and in a week, there's 20% more to add on to that, because technology is a ever-expanding topic.
That's why I like it, because if it was boring, I wouldn't be doing this. It's always interesting. There's always something to learn. It's always going to be that way in IT. And that's why I think we're doing this now for people that are just getting into this industry. You're going to be enjoying that aspect of it for the next 20 to 30 years. And it's going to be something you will continue to grow. You'll continue to make more money. You'll continue to have that type of experience for you and your family. I think it's just a win-win everywhere.
It definitely is, but I gotta go. I just wanted to give you a quick shout out, because, man, you and your team, rock stars, man. Definitely.
Thanks, Nathan. I appreciate that. You did the hard part, but we're more than happy to help, and thanks for calling and let us know.
Definitely. Thank you so much.
That's always something that is inspiring to me, not only to make these training materials, because when I got into this, we really started this experiment of Professor Messer by running into and finding situations where there just wasn't enough on the internet for people to learn everything they needed to learn. And what's interesting is that we're sort of still in the same place. We have been a company for 15 years plus doing this. We go back to the 600 series of A+, 600, 700, 800, 900. We're in the 1000 series. This is our 5th edition of A+. We're about to start our 6th. So when you start thinking that over that time, the internet's been here the whole time, how have we not been able to improve the quality of information that we're providing to people that need to learn it, not just to pass a certification exam, but to set themselves up for their career? I think that's the objective. We always say that our goal is for you to get a job or get a better job. I mean, we're doing certification exams, we're doing live streams, we're doing some Q&A, we've got video training and that type of thing, but that's the means to the end. The end is really you getting a job or you getting a better job. That's the goal. And I think that if we just keep doing this, we keep making materials, we keep giving you high quality training, giving you the things that can enable you, it's there for you to take. So we can put it out to the internet, we can make it available to the world. Now it's up to you. You have to do the hard part. You have to grab this information, pull it together, start studying, put together a plan, earn these certifications, and get that job or get that better job. That's what we need to work on. That's our goal. That's our objective. Hopefully something we're doing every day that's coming across in the materials we make. Thank you so much for being here in the first hour for our Q&A. Thank you for being here in the second hour for our call-in in the after show. We love doing these live streams. We love having you here. We love the interaction. We can't thank you enough for showing up and participating with us. We have such a good time. Remember that we do another one of these next week. We have a Network Plus study group on Tuesday of next week if you'd like to be here live. We have Security Plus on Wednesday the week after that. Always check the calendar because these times are constantly moving. In my world, go to professormesser.com/calendar. You'll know exactly when the next live event is going to be. As always, thank you for your ongoing support. Thank you for everything you do. We really could not do this without you, and we sure appreciate you. Thanks for being here. We'll see you next time on the A+ Study Group. Thanks, everybody.